Hello and welcome to Home Buying Made Simple. I'm Lisa Williams with Williams & Associates Realty. Buying a home comes with a lot of moving parts, and one of the most important but least understood players in the process is the title company. Joining me today is Candace Liebner, Client Relations Manager with Prism Title. Well, good morning, Candace, and thanks so much for joining me here today.
You're welcome, Lisa. I'm really privileged to be here and excited to talk title.
Okay, well then let's get started. What is title and why is it needed?
It's probably one of the items that people don't understand that they need as part of the home buying or selling process. And a title policy is going to protect you from any liens or judgments or any type of outstanding debts that maybe the seller has on the property that you're looking to purchase. Because again, you do want to buy that property free and clear. You don't want any of the baggage that might go along with it. Also, too, just want to quickly mention that with title, people are used to having insurance. They're used to having renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, insurance on their car. Title insurance works a little bit differently, because with those other types of insurances, you're protecting yourself from what's going to happen in the future, like an accident or a fire or anything along that line. Title insurance is a little bit different. It protects you from what happened in the past, so that way that item or liens doesn't follow the property after you purchase it.
Okay, and a lot of people think that title insurance only works with buyers, but you also work with the seller as well, right?
Do,
so you
right.
work on both sides. So how does that work?
Well, with the sellers, what they do is when the realtor is looking to list the property, we can provide information to the seller and we can tell them, we took a look at your title and the history behind what happened with the house. Who were the prior owners? Who owns the property now? Who can actually sell the property? Is there any judgments that are out there? Are there any liens, like maybe a payoff for a mortgage that needs to be acquired? Items like that are what we are looking for, so that way we can make sure the property at the time of closing is paid off free and clear.
Okay, so then there's a difference between title insurance for the buyer and then an owner's title policy.
Correct, there is.
Okay, so can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. When you're a seller, you're going to acquire what's called an owner's policy. It is going to be a little bit more expensive than what the buyer is going to be incurring. But the buyer, what they do is they receive a lender's title policy. That's going to protect the lender's interest when the buyer is looking to provide or obtain financing for the property that they're looking to purchase. So two different types of policies. Mm-hmm. Cost factor is a little bit different, but both needed on both sides of the transaction.
Okay. And then when you mentioned that, because I know as a realtor and when you're working with the seller, if they have a prior title policy, that does help them kind of like in the long run to kind of save some of that expense?
It definitely does.
Okay.
So if you are selling your property and you're looking to get a discount on what the title policy is going to cost you in the transaction, we can take a final title policy that you have. We can provide a 15% discount off of the new policy that you have to order. Okay. So that can be a very significant savings to the seller, depending on what the purchase price is going to be that they're deciding with the buyer.
Okay. And then when you do the title search, what all happens? How does that work?
A lot of stuff happens behind the scenes.
Okay.
And what we do is we have searchers, and that's what their official name is called. But what they do is they look into each county, each municipality for that property. And they're looking to see what has occurred in the history of that property. How many owners have there been? Have there been any quitclaim deeds? Have there been any deaths in the family? Is the couple that's selling the house currently going through a divorce? Is there a bankruptcy or foreclosure in the past? We're looking at all of those items because they can affect the seller's ability to actually sell the property. Because what happens if the seller thinks they own the property, we do our search and find out that that seller actually does not own the property. Maybe a sibling owns it, or maybe a parent owns it. So then we have to address those issues with that person that's trying to sell.
Okay. And what just popped in my head is like, or it could be in a trust or something like that. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the common issues you see come up in, with the title or the title searches? What are some of the common things that they see?
I think one of the most common issues that we have would be judgments against the property, judgments against the owner. Mm. that maybe the seller owner does not know and are not aware of it. But when we pull up our information, because we're bringing that information from the public records, we can see that there's a judgment that has been filed. Or what happens if you have a really common name?
Okay.
And we do our search, and then our searchers find that there's pages and pages of judgments that are out there against your name. Well, maybe those aren't yours. Maybe they belong to someone else. At that point in time, we can file and put together what's called an affidavit of judgment, where the seller is legally stating, nope, these are not my judgments. These do not belong to me. We don't have to worry about paying them off at closing. We move on to the next part of the transaction.
Okay. So they're resolved by doing those affidavits or digging further into the title to try to see
Correct.
How can we go about resolving this situation.
Definitely, because maybe there could be one or two of those judgments that really are and do belong to the seller. At that point, we perhaps need to order a payoff. Maybe we need to go to the city and find out if that actually is it open? Does it still exist? So we do our research a little bit more to make sure that, yes, it does get paid off at closing, if it does need to get paid off. And the dollar amounts that we see when we do our searches are probably not accurate amounts. That's why we always have to call. We always have to verify anything. We can't just take, the word of whatever someone has recorded at the county level. So we do a little bit of digging to make sure it's accurate.
Okay. Now, are there typical fees with regards to the title search?
Definitely. One thing that we have here in the state of Wisconsin that a lot of other states don't have, we actually have very reasonable pricing for title.
Okay.
Because we do have an entity that does, Alta does decide on what our fees are going to be for any title company in the entire state of Wisconsin. It keeps our fees that we charge our clients really low. If you go to other states, they don't have that. Any title company can charge whatever they want. Their title fees are 3 times as much as what we have here in Wisconsin. So Ohio, Arizona, Illinois, those areas are much more expensive for selling and buying homes. We here in Wisconsin don't have those issues. So we're able to reasonably price what we do and how we do it. So if you're looking for an owner's title policy, if you're looking for a lender's title policy, it's going to be the same price no matter what title company you go to. There are a couple fees that are not regulated, which title companies can charge whatever they want for. Normally that's what your closing fee would be. And depending on how they incorporate some of their fees in there, it could just be one fee or it could be broken down into a couple different things. But it does all have to do with getting that client to the closing table.
Okay. Now, when a buyer goes to the lender and change their pre-approval to a mortgage application, then things really start to work. And I know from the title company that there are a lot of different players, people that are involved in this. So how or what steps or what stages do you actually get involved?
Once a loan application has been started or even completed, the lender can either reach out to us and ask us for a lender's title policy. Sometimes it's a realtor reaching out to us too, because they'll reach out and say, I've got an accepted offer on the property and our buyer's definitely going to need a title policy. So we can step in at that time and get it ordered and get it ready, because we like to have and be proactive as far as ordering those titles, getting it back to the lender really quickly, making sure that the real estate agent also gets a copy of it too. Let's take a look at anything that might show up. Let's address those issues ahead of time, so that way we're clear sailing by the time we've got to get to the closing table.
Okay. And, I sometimes too, you may have a file that is a cash deal, some may be, financed. Is there a particular time frame, or how do they gauge, like how much time do we need in order to get the title? Is there a time frame for that, or not necessarily?
Well, what I always tell my clients and anybody that's looking to order a title policy, order it right away, because you never know what's going to come up on the title. Depending on what county that you're in, it could take a little bit longer to get that information back from those municipalities when our searchers are looking for information. Milwaukee County, we can have things completed within 2 to 3 days. And that's from getting the order into our company, working on the title policy with the searchers, having our title examiners actually taking a look at the information that they were provided and putting it into a really good format that everybody can understand. From that point then, title policy will be sent out to the lender, it'll be sent out to the real estate agent as well. Same with the seller side too. We want the sellers to see their title policy as soon as we get it completed, because again, if there's something that shows up, maybe there's another person out there that also has title rights to the property. Maybe the seller wasn't aware of that. We have to work together to find out and rectify the situation and see who's the actual person that does need to be at closing.
Okay. Now, we were talking about the title, the lenders, and then the owner's policy, but then the title company also prepares either the closing statement or the settlement statement, or they could be working with both parties.
Exactly.
So how do you go about doing that?
Well, once we receive information from the lender is going to say, we're all set. We've got our clear to close. Our buyers are ready to move forward now to closing day. At that point, our processors that work in our title company are going to work with the lender to receive what we call closing instructions. Those closing instructions have a lot of documentation as far as who's getting paid at closing. How much does a lender charge as far as their closing fees are concerned? How much are the title company's fees? Are there any taxes? Are there any prorations from the seller that the seller might be giving to the buyer? Is there a seller credit that the seller is giving to the buyer as part of the real estate transaction? So we really take a look at lender's instructions. We take a look at the offer to purchase, because that's kind of our guide is the offer.
Right.
The offer is going to tell us what we need to do, and we all have to follow along with that. If there's any changes along the way, any amendments need to be furnished to us as well, so that way we can make changes on our end. Once all that information is gathered, we're going to put the closing statement together and we're going to send it out to the buyers and the sellers and the lenders, everybody that's involved. Even in a cash transaction, when we're representing both seller and buyer, we still have to have both sides know this is how much cash to bring to closing. Same with a lender, when they're involved, how much does the buyer have to bring to closing in order for the lender to be satisfied as well? Okay. So we're taking a look at all that.
Okay. And then there is a difference between lender fees, third-party fees.
Yeah, no, that's a tough one.
And prepaid items, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. And those prepaid items can be maybe a homeowner's insurance policy that was paid outside of closing. Maybe a buyer paid for an appraisal right at the time that it was performed. Same with a home inspection. Maybe they had a home inspection done, so that had to get paid prior to closing. Sometimes it doesn't, a lot of times it does. So those are prepaid items that we take a look at. Some of the lender fees, you're going to see that on the closing statement. A lot of those are not prepaid, but they're part of closing fees. The buyer doesn't have to pay that all out of pocket. It just gets placed on their closing statement. So that way they can follow through and see, well, what did I pay for before the transaction closed? What's happening today when we're doing the closing? And maybe what has to get taken care of after closing.
Okay. And are there any issues or any closing delays that could happen where the closing doesn't happen? Either because of title or because of what is showing on the settlement statement. There's a lot of different things that could happen.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we work in a world where there's so many variables in what we do every day. And that's why you have to deal with professionals. You have to know who can take care of what on that closing statement, how to get it changed, how to get it removed, how to make changes along the way. Sometimes it has to do with appraisals, for example. What happens if appraisal comes in and the appraisal comes in lower than what the lender expected? Is the seller going to be giving up some of their purchase price in order to make the buyer not have to come to closing with a lot of money? Or does the buyer, maybe they have to acquire money out of a 401k or from a family member and get a gift? All those items can make changes as far as what happens on closing day. Mm-hmm. But again, we can make the appropriate changes as long as we're told about it prior to. Doesn't happen very often. Once in a while, we do have changes that do take place at closing.
Right.
But again, we still want everyone to close, and that's our ultimate goal. Here in the state of Wisconsin, we're not allowed to do what's called dry closings, which means we're supposed to have the transaction close on the day that it's supposed to close, at the time that it's supposed to close. All the money is supposed to transpire and be going back and forth between lenders and buyers and sellers all on the same day. We're really not supposed to have a continuation on the next day. And we're one of the few states in the United States that has that. But again, it's a way to make sure that everyone gets what they want done on the day that they're expecting to close, without having to drag out more and more days and be continual.
And if there was one piece of advice that you could either give to a buyer or a seller,
what would I give?
What would you give?
I would say always be proactive. Always know how much money you have to put down at any given time. Always know if your lender has an actual pre-approval letter from you or for you, or do you have to make changes along the way? Do you need to find a different lender that might be able to help you better that loan program that's really going to fit your needs versus what someone else has? So I think doing your homework, making sure you know where you want to live, making sure that you know how much money you have to put down, if you need a gift, if you need a grant. There's so many different factors that go into purchasing a home. Making sure that you don't make any large purchases during the time of either looking for a house or getting ready to close. Once you close on the house, go do whatever you want. Go buy 12 pieces of furniture and go buy another car. But don't do anything until after the closing is 100% done and everybody is completed with their sides of their transaction. So that's my big piece of advice, I think, is just be proactive and know and ask a lot of people. Just don't take information from one person. Ask more questions and don't be afraid to ask a question. There's never a dumb question out there. There's a lot of us that have been doing this for a long time. I know you and I have been in the business for years. We've seen just about every type of transaction. We want to make sure that both buyers and sellers get to the closing table and actually close on their transaction. How can we do to help? That's what we're here for. So there's never a dumb question, just always ask. And it doesn't matter what time or day. Well, maybe not 1 o'clock in the morning, but we do want questions to be asked, and don't hold off asking those questions either.
Right. And as you were talking, one of the things that came to my mind is, because you were talking about the title, is gap insurance. You know, like don't do anything, while you're going through, this transaction. But can you explain a little bit about gap? Because we do see that also on the offer to purchase, but from a buyer or a seller standpoint, what is gap?
Gap insurance is important because when we start our process and we're taking a look at what's going on with the property, we want to make sure that the seller's protected as far as when we start our process until we can get to the closing table and get things recorded and remove sellers off of the property. So gap does cover that time frame. Because again, what happens if there is another lien that shows up? A title company is like an insurance company. We do insure what we're transacting and the business that we're working on for that transaction. So again, it does have insurance, and if you have to file a claim against an insurance company, by all means, you have the right to do so. But just so you know that title companies are not in the business of filing or satisfying claims. We want to make sure that we do everything right the first time, so there's no claims that have to get filed. So gap coverage is really important for all sellers out there to have that.
Right. Well, Candace, thank you so much. And as you can see or hear, that there is a lot in the process of the title search, working with the closing agent, getting it to closing. And I thank you so much for the information that you provided here today. And if someone, do they get in contact with you or get in contact with the title company if they are looking to get title insurance?
I would love it if you're interested in purchasing or selling properties. Doesn't matter whether it's residential, some type of investment property, or maybe a commercial property. Please reach out to me either by cell phone or also by email. And I don't work a normal 9 to 5 day. I work whenever the work is out there and when people have questions. So feel free to reach out. There's never, like I said, a bad question. There's never really a bad time. But I want people to be, helped as far as what are their concerns, what are their questions, what are the unknowns that they may be needing to ask about.
Okay, and Candace, what is your number?
My cell phone number is 262-483-3220. And my email address is candace@prismtitle.com. And my first name is spelled Candace.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much, Candace.
Thanks, Lisa, for having
welcome
me.
to Home Buying Made Simple. This is Lisa Williams, and happy house hunting.